Reppin' Philly ain't a choice. It's a way of life. PhillyGoat.com is your one-stop shop for Philly pride. Use the promo code Jim Montgomery for 10% off. Look fresh, stay Philly, Philly Goat. Go Birds. What's up, everyone? Welcome to This Day in Philly Sports History for October 1st, 2025. I'm your host, Jim Montgomery. Welcome to a Wednesday edition of the podcast. Happy Hump Day to everyone out there. Happy Red October. It is here. Major League playoffs are underway. Phillies in the playoffs, hence the Red October. Funny story. My daughter asked, well, what if our colors were blue? Would it be Blue October? And I'm like, that's actually a very good question. And I believe, and I could be wrong on this, but I believe it's just Red October because of the movie play on the words. So obviously I don't think they're doing Blue October in LA. However, wouldn't mind making their Octobers a little blue starting this weekend, but we'll get more into that later. Just a quick programming note. Tomorrow and Friday, the episodes probably will be a little bit later. I'm off of work, so likely will not be getting up super early. Kids will still be up. They still go to school on Friday, so Friday might be more of a normal time, but might be slightly later. So if you're seeing a delay, that is why. Off tomorrow for Yom Kippur, and then our school is closed on Friday for Charter Day. So to all my Jewish friends out there, Gamar Hatma Tova. I think I pronounced that right, and if I did not, I apologize. But have a good day of atonement tomorrow. All right, so Phils. Dodgers did beat the Reds yesterday 10-5. No real surprise there. We'll see what happens, but this is gearing up and looking like it's going to be Phillies Dodgers, and it's going to be one hell of a series. And it's a shame that it's going to be just a 5-game series because this is probably going to be some good baseball. And these two teams have played some phenomenal series in their team's history. If it is the Dodgers-Phillies, we'll break down, because this is a Philly sports history podcast. We will break down some of those series coming up. But I don't know. It's going to be tough. Jordan Romano was activated from the IL. Not sure if he's going to be on the postseason roster or not. Okay. We'll see. And who knows? I mean, there could be worse things. He is a body, but I don't know. I feel like he would be the guy, and God forbid if they get down super big, that you just throw in there to just eat up innings and whatever. But I don't know. I don't see him, especially with the addition of Walker Buehler. I don't see him making the postseason roster. But ultimately, it's all going to come down to Bryce and what he's able to do. Hopefully, he can go back to being his October best. As they used to say about somebody else who was Mr. October, Reggie Jackson was the straw that stirs the drink. Bryce Harper is the straw that stirs this team drinks. I feel like as he goes, the Phillies go. You can say what you want about Schwarber. You can say what you want about guys like Bader and Trey Turner. But ultimately, I think if Bryce has a good series, it bodes well for the Phillies. All right. So a couple things that we've been going through, going down my predictions from the beginning of the season. Going to give you 7 through 4 as we're counting down today. And number 7 on the list, I said Bryson Stott would be an all-star. Missed the mark a little bit on that one. He had 257, 13 homers, 66 RBI, 22 doubles. Struggled very early in the season, has been turning it on here of late. He's been great in the field. He is a good defensive second baseman, was able to slot over to play shortstop when Trey was out, but kind of missed the mark on that one. All right, number 6. I said Topper would be fired. And boy, was I glad I was wrong on that one. For everything that happened this year, I will say I think Rob Thompson had himself a great year. probably should be in manager of the year discussions. He won't be because of the talent and the payroll of this team, but did a very good job overall. Sure, I mean, he made mistakes here and there, but overall, you take a look at the whole body of work, 162 games, and the hands that he was dealt, specifically early in the season with Romano not being what was advertised, with Max Kepler's struggles, with Alvarado being suspended. Excuse me. I think he did a phenomenal job. So, way off the mark on that one. Number 5. Trey Turner will struggle and be moved down in the order. Once again, completely missed the mark on that one. Trey had himself a solid season, hit 304, won the batting title. First Philly since Richie Ashburn to win the batting title, added 31 doubles, 15 homers, 69 RBI. And probably more important than anything, he was not a Gold Glove winning shortstop this year. I don't think Trey Turner's going to win a Gold Glove this year. He shouldn't win a Gold Glove anyway. But he certainly worked and improved his fielding. Sure, there's some times where he let some balls eat him up, or double pumped on a throw, or this, that. But overall, I think he kind of changed the narrative on his ability to play shortstop. So I was wrong on that one as well. And number 4, after going so well yesterday, number 4, I said Jose Alvarado will turn into the dominant closer the Phillies have been looking for. Well, the Phillies do have a dominant closer. However, it is not Jose Alvarado. We all know how that played out. So, first 3 I wasn't too bad on. This one, not so good today. But we'll go over some more tomorrow and Friday as well as we get ready for either the Dodgers or the Reds on Friday. Hop on the Red October Express, baby. Making no local stops until Saturday. All right, so yesterday, a lot of positive feedback on the theme songs, and everybody seemed to agree that Amen was the choice for Philly-based sitcom with the best theme music. I tried to look at the American League 2. Just not as good. It just really worked for the National League. I mean, Toronto doesn't even have, I couldn't find any sitcoms based in Toronto that were American. But that's what you get when Joe Carter hits a walk-off home run to end the World Series. By the way, you can get your Joe Carter Ruined My Childhood t-shirts at phillygoat.com. Use the promo code Jim Montgomery. But there were some good sitcoms, but not so much with the theme music. Probably Detroit had Sister Sister, Martin, Home Improvement, okay theme songs, but I don't think anybody's going to put those 3 in like their top 10 list of theme songs. Although Sister Sister, sometimes Sister Sister. Anyway, Cleveland, you had the Drew Carey Show, which was a catchy theme song, but nobody's going to go around singing Cleveland Rocks. That does not live in Cleveland, and I'd be willing to bet most of the people in Cleveland are not going to go around saying Cleveland Rocks, but I digress. Probably the GOAT on this list would be Boston with Cheers. Can't go wrong with Everybody Knows Your Name. New York, I think you can take your pick. So many great sitcoms based out of New York. Unfortunately for me, probably my go-to New York-based sitcom theme song can't really talk about, especially here in Philly anymore, due to the man who was on the name of the show. But that would be, I'm not going to acknowledge his name, but it was the Huxtable family. That was a pretty damn good theme song. And then Seattle, you have Frasier. Again, not a ton of sitcoms, a lot of dramas based in Seattle. So it doesn't really work, like I said, for the American League, but got some heavy hitters there in the National League. So we're going to continue to keep our eye on that as we go. All right, moving on to the Eagles. Kevin Petula, Vic Fangio both spoke yesterday. Obviously, Petula was grilled, said a whole lot of nothing. It was like listening to Nick Sirianni Jr. up there. They spoke and nothing was really said, and I didn't expect to get anything out of Petula anyway. Basically was the parrot of Nick Sirianni. So I don't know. We'll have to see. Players probably will speak today. I think Jalen has a press conference. AJ might be in the locker room. So anxious to see where that goes heading into this game against Denver. Vic did correctly point out that the magic number for the Phillies to win the World Series is 11. Vic is a huge Phillies fan, so you got to love that. Did say that the practice window for Nakobe Dean will open either this week or next, and did say that he's not thinking about right now moving Jahad Campbell to edge to open up a spot for Nakobe Dean. So that's going to be worth monitoring as we go. Where does Nakobe fit in to the big picture with everybody? But that was about it. Kind of a quiet day, sort of everybody talking about AJ and everything. So we'll see how that goes. But they return to practice today. Still unclear, like I said, whether or not AJ will speak. Probably will have locker room availability, but it's just a matter of whether he's going to actually say something or not. All right, yesterday's trivia question. I asked you, who did Jon Runyan replace at right tackle, and then who was his replacement? He replaced Lonnie Palele in 2000, played all the way through 2009, and then was replaced by yesterday's turnstile impersonator, Winston Justice. So thank you to everybody. I think everybody got the Winston Justice. Lonnie Palele, though, was who Jon Runyan replaced. I would say that's a pretty good upgrade, though, if you ask me. All right, some quick housekeeping notes. Be sure to follow me on social media at Philly Jimbo. Subscribe to the YouTube channel, Jimbo_Mont, and continue to spread the word as we grow this thing. And if you are interested, a few of you have reached out and bought the raffle tickets to support the Philadelphia Sports Hall of Fame. This is a great prize, and I was wrong in saying it. It's not just the 4 major sports. You get 2 tickets to every home game for the Eagles, Flyers, Sixers, Phillies, Wings, Union, and I think that was it. Either way, that's a lot of sports. You could basically be covered. Not sure you're going to make it to every game, but you can certainly sell them or give them to your friends, give them out as Christmas presents. Like, you'd have birthday and Christmas presents covered for the entire year. But the raffle tickets are $20. Hit me up and I'll shoot you the link so you can fill it out and send the Venmo over. But there's also a Phillies spring training trip, a 70-inch TV. So lots of good prizes. Supports the Philadelphia Sports Hall of Fame as we gear up for the induction ceremony in November. And then speaking of that, throughout the month of October, obviously it's Red October. It's Phillies playoffs. We're going to count down the top 10 moments in Phillies postseason history starting today. And then the second half of the month will start our annual Philadelphia Sports Hall of Fame inductee spotlights. So looking forward to that as we go. And then don't forget, coming tomorrow night, this week's episode of the Brotherly Birds Breakdown. Kyle and I will break down that Tampa Bay game, get you ready for the Denver Broncos and everything you need to know fantasy and betting wise. So that will drop tomorrow. And again, the best way to stay in the loop is to subscribe to the YouTube channel or any of my social media at Philly Jimbo. All right, October 1st. First, we're going to go back to 1950. And on this day in 1950, the Phillies beat the Brooklyn Dodgers 4-1 in Ebbets Field in 10 innings to clinch the National League pennant for the first time since 1915. Robin Roberts pitched all 10 innings. Dick Sisler hit a 3-run homer in the top of the 10th to win it for the Phils. Unfortunately, they would just be outmatched by the Yankees, due in small part to losing Curt Simmons to the Korean War, and essentially Robin Roberts and the rest of the pitchers being spent down the stretch. And they just didn't have the guns to do it. But on this day in 1950, Phillies win the National League pennant, beating the Dodgers 4-1 in Ebbets Field in 10 innings when Dick Sisler hit a 3-run homer, in the top of the 10th. And then on this day in 1975, it was the Thrilla in Manila. It was the rubber match in the Ali-Frazier trilogy. Phillies own Joe Frazier. Unfortunately, it was Muhammad Ali winning by 14th round corner retirement. It was probably one of the best and most brutal fights in heavyweight boxing history. Both fighters talked about really all three of their fights. Excuse me, were battles, but this one specifically, the final match, because both guys, there was a lot of trash talk and stuff going into this fight, and both guys obviously wanted to win the third match, but it would be Muhammad Ali beating Joe Frazier, who would go on to fight two more times before officially retiring. He had a loss and a draw in his final two fights. But on this day in 1975, the Thrilla in Manila happened in the Philippines. Muhammad Ali wins by 14th round, I should say, corner retirement out of Joe Frazier's camp. And then in 1980, Phillies beat the Cubs 5-0 to move within a half a game of the Expos for first place in the National League East. Mike Schmidt and Greg Luzinski each homer. Steve Carlton pitched all 9 innings, struck out 10, gave up 2 hits, and in the process went over 300 innings. He was the last Major League Baseball player to ever pitch 300 innings in a game, and that was in 1980. So just goes to show you how much the game has changed and just how special Steve Carlton was and how special that 1980 season was for the Phillies. They would win 2 of the next 3 against the Expos to finish the season and would beat the Expos for the division title and go on, obviously, to win the World Series. And then finally, in 2017, the Eagles beat the Chargers in LA 26-24. Carson Wentz threw for 242 yards and a touchdown. But this was the LeGarrette Blount game. Exploded and just had some monster, just hard-hitting beast mode runs. Ran for 136 yards. Also caught a pass for 20 yards. It was a fantasy football player's dream, though, as both teams went over 400 yards of offense. Phillip Rivers, to his credit, threw for 347 yards. And I kind of, as I was doing the research for this, it brought me back. This was the period, or this was the game that we all started to believe in that Eagles team. All started, as we talked about last week, with the Jake Elliott field goal. But I think we all started to believe. What I think was lost in all of that is this type of game was a precursor to what we were going to see in the Super Bowl against Tom Brady, where neither defense could stop anybody. So I think everybody talks about the offense and just how great Nick Foles was. But he had to be, because the defense, if they weren't getting pressure and playing with a big lead, they weren't as good last year or that year. But on this date in 2017, Eagles beat the Chargers 26-24. Carson Wentz and LeGarrette Blount lead the way as all of a sudden we started to believe in the Eagles. This day in Philly sports history is proud to be a part of the Clashing Conferences Sports Fan Network, a growing community of diehard fans turning their sports passion into something special. Whether you're looking for unique shows, want to launch your own podcast but don't have the time, or need production services, theclashingconferences.com has everything you need. Explore fan-driven content, become a member, or tap into their media services to level up your brand. That's clashingconferences.com, where fans' voices get heard. All right, it is What If Wednesday, brought to you by Lotwin. Go to lotwin.com to get your 3D custom hype chains. These things are great for bachelor parties, fantasy football, youth sports. My son loves his. And I will say, again, I keep mentioning this, but you pay like $50-$60 for the Fanatic ones or the Eagles ones or whatever at Rally House or at the stadium. These things are cheaper than that, and the quality is so much better. So go to Lotwin, use the promo code TCCPOD to take 10% off of your order. All right, so going to stick with the Red October Phillies theme today. And yesterday we talked about the Phillies finally chasing down the Mets and winning the division on the last day of the season. And I think what many people don't remember, because I certainly didn't, was on this date in 2007, it would have been game 163 had it kind of gone the other way. So basically, the Phillies and the Mets would have played a one-game playoff to win the NL East. Fortunately for the Phillies, the Mets met it, and it did not happen that way. But for What If Wednesday, what if the Mets had beaten the Marlins that day or just won one more game? And I say that because the way the standings worked out, if the Phillies had lost and the Mets had lost, it would have been a convoluted tiebreaker, because then you throw in the Rockies and the Padres, who did play a playoff game in order to get into the playoffs and be the wild card. But let's just say the Mets win one more game or win that final game of the season. It sets up game 163. It sets up that de facto playoff for the NL East. And who knows? I mean, I look back and it probably would have been Kyle Loesch starting for that Phillies team. You would have had probably Kyle Kendrick as well as Adam Eaton coming into that game as well. Hamels and Jamie Moore, who pitched the day before, likely wouldn't have been available. But knowing Jamie Moore, he probably would have been like, let me pitch. But I think this would have been one hell of a game. I think we missed out due to the Mets being the Mets, and it would have been a fun game. In my mind, though, I think there's no doubt in my mind that the Phillies would have won this game. Now, the caveat to this is, had this one-game playoff occurred, both the Phillies and the Mets would have made the playoffs and would have played each other in the next series anyway. So you would have been set up for, it was basically they would have been playing for home field advantage in this. So we would have been set up for an epic Mets-Phillies series. And again, I don't think there's any doubt in my mind the way the Phillies were playing that year, the way the Phillies were confident, they had that swag. I think they ran into a buzzsaw with the Colorado Rockies, who went all the way to the World Series, who, had the Mets won one more game, wouldn't even have been in the playoffs. So I think we would have seen a good series, but what would have happened to the rest of that Phillies run? Maybe they get confidence in 2007. And, I mean, we saw the Rockies go all the way and lose to the Red Sox. Maybe it was the Phillies. Who knows? It's just one of those things because, of course, we're making fun of the Mets here, but because the Mets are the Mets, we missed out on what could have been an epic series. And it certainly would have changed the narrative of that entire 07 to 11 run. And I don't necessarily think it would have changed, unless they win the World Series. I don't necessarily think, because Pat Gillick doesn't seem to be the kind of guy that would just hand out thank you contracts. So I do think they still would have been set up. I still think he might have retired somewhere in that frame and Ruben Amaro would have taken over. But it's just one of those things. What if the Mets would have won? That would have been, especially at that time, not the Mets now. No, not this Mets team that kicked our butts in the NLDS last year. But that Mets team would have been a fun first round series. But of course, the Mets blew it. We ran into a buzzsaw, but we got the last laugh the next year. But let me know your thoughts on that. What if the Mets had won? What if there was a one-game playoff and then they played each other in the first round? How do you think it would have changed the narrative of that whole Phillies run? But it's still fun to think about. All right, and then finally today, we'll start our countdown of the top Phillies postseason moments. We're going to do 2 today and 2 tomorrow before we get into the single ones. But coming in at number 10, the 2022 wild card 9th inning versus the Cardinals. I remember this well. Phillies were down 2-0 in the top of the 9th. Couldn't get much of anything going. We were starting to think, all right, they kind of shot their load going into the postseason, and now they have nothing left. Rhys Hoskins started off with a strikeout, and then it was single, walk, hit by pitch. Phillies are within 1, and then Gene Segura steps up, hits a 2-run single. Phillies explode for 6 runs in the top of the 9th, win it 6-3. Come back the next night, win it 2-0. I believe that was the Aaron Nola. I think that was the birth of playoff Nola. And then it was on as they made that magical run to the World Series. But it all started in the 9th inning of the wild card game out in St. Louis, in a game that it really looked like they were dead. And all of a sudden, Gene Segura, that was a lot of fun. All right, that's our number 10 Phillies postseason moment. Coming in at number 9, Manny Trio's triple in the 8th inning of Game 5 of the NLCS knocked in 2 runs to give the Phillies a 7-5 lead. the Astros would battle back, but it was Gary Maddox knocking in Del Unser in the top of the 10th to win it. But that Manny Trio home run, if you've ever haven't watched it yet, watch it because Harry Kalas is going nuts. I believe it's Harry Kalas, or it could be Andy Musser. The quality is pretty grainy, but Manny Trio gave the Phillies the lead, and that, you want to talk about an epic series? I could certainly see this series, potential series. I don't want to count my chickens before they hatch, but I could see this potential series against the Dodgers playing out very similar to this Astros 5-game series, where four of the 5 games went to extra innings, and the teams just were so evenly matched. Good pitching, good hitting. But that 1980 NLCS was one for the ages. And our number 9 Phillies postseason moment is Manny Trio's triple in the 8th inning of Game 5. That does lead to today's trivia question. Speaking of that epic 1980 NLCS, who was the MVP of the 1980 NLCS? Hit me up on the Back to the Future voice and text line 267-495-8531. Get that. Anything else Philly sports related off your chest, but who won the 1980 NLCS MVP for your Fightins? All right, on this day, back in 2017, Eagles beat the Chargers 26-24 out in LA. LeGarrette Blount ran wild on the Chargers defense. In 1980, Phillies beat the Cubs 5-0 to move within a half a game of the Expos. They'd win the next night and then take 2 of 3 from the Expos to win that division. Schmidt-Lozinski homered. Steve Carlton went over 300 innings. No major league pitcher has gone over 300 innings since. 75, it was the Thrilla in Manila. Phillies' Joe Frazier, corner retirement in the 14th round against Muhammad Ali. And the Phillies win the pennant on this day in 1950, beating the Dodgers 4-1, thanks to a Dick Sizzler 3-run home run in the top of the 10th. We'll have more on the Eagles as the players speak today. We'll have more updates. Hopefully we'll know whether or not we're going to. I will say I'm rooting for the Reds tonight, only because you want the Dodgers to kind of use their pitching as much as possible. So if the Dodgers are going to win, I'd rather them win it in 3 games as opposed to 2. But that's just me. But we'll have a clearer picture on the NL playoff race tomorrow. Tomorrow is also Thursday, so it'll be Throwback Thursday. Lots to look forward to tomorrow. But just remember, we might be a little bit later than what we normally are. But let me know your thoughts on the Phillies Mets in 2007, had they played a 1-game playoff, as well as your thoughts on the number 10 and number 9 postseason moments. And don't forget trivia: who was the 1980 NLCS MVP? This has been This Day in Philly Sports History for October 10th, 2025. My name's Jim Montgomery. Go have yourselves a Wednesday. And until next time, I'll see you when I see you.